If you're a preacher, they say you only receive a few precious opportunities to tell the people what you think they should know, what you want them to hear. They say you need to make every opportunity count. They say that only a few words can make all the difference in the world. To be able to speak to others about the Christian faith is one of the greatest privileges for those of us who strive to preach the gospel. And being able to talk about the Christian faith from pulpits like this one has been one of the greatest privileges of my life. I did not, however, begin my ministry in the Episcopal Church. As a member of the Church of the Brethren, think kind of pacifist, Methodist, Mennonites. I was licensed to the ministry at the age of 16 and became a pastor of my first congregation when I was 21 years old. It was the summer between my junior and senior year of college, and if any of you are thinking that's crazy, you're not completely wrong. At the beginning of that summer, I had been hired as a concrete tester, where it was my job to pick up hundreds of 35-pound samples of concrete from inside a room kept soaking wet with sprinklers, affix plastic molten caps onto each end of the cylinders, trying not to get burned in the process, and then placing the cylinders into a machine which tested the strength of the concrete by pressing the ends of each cylinder together until the concrete sample shattered. And while this work was, as you can imagine, deeply fulfilling, when the district executive of the Church of the Brethren called and offered me a summer pastorate at the Circleville, Ohio church, I quickly abandoned my uncertain future in concrete testing to serve as their summer pastor. No seminary, no training, just happy to be there. When I arrived in that small town, I found a white clapboard church and a simple parsonage next door and about 85 people who came faithfully on Sunday mornings, Sunday evenings, and Wednesday nights to worship and to learn more about God than I knew or was equipped to teach them. Still, with only 3 years of college, I was the person in the congregation with the highest level of formal education. Early on, one member of the congregation told me, if the King James Version was good enough for the Apostle Paul, it's good enough for me. Who could argue with that? Now, I probably made about every mistake that you can make in that little church, but I've never forgotten the loving patience that first congregation expressed towards me. And after my first sermon, several of the elders took me aside to thank me for my preaching and to gently suggest that I might want to expound a little bit more on the scripture. I soon came to discover that the congregation had been accustomed to hearing 50-minute sermons from my predecessor, and many of the members felt I was only scratching the surface with my paltry 10-minute offerings. I know some sermons seem longer than others, but you'll be relieved to know I was never able to reach the 50-minute mark. But throughout that long Midwestern summer, I preached and I taught and I officiated at weddings and funerals and visited one memorable parishioner whose immaculate home had a dirt floor worn as smooth and as hard as marble. She had covered the floor with as many rugs as she could afford, and during the course of my visit, she offered me a glass of iced tea in what may have been the only glass she owned. When I returned home to the parsonage that night, I found myself in tears because I could not remember when I had ever been the recipient of such profound generosity or witnessed such faithfulness in the face of such true poverty. Small seeds. Often the worship service would end with an old Brethren hymn which took as its refrain a line from today's epistle. As the King James Version expressed it, "For I know whom I have believed, and am persuaded that he is able to keep that which I've committed unto him against that day." Well, Circleville may be a long, long way from Dallas, Texas, but the lessons I learned in that faith-filled congregation are still with me, and what I once hoped I might grow to believe, I now hold dear with all that is in me. I have come to believe that Christ, even the smallest particle of Christ, changes everything. Small seeds. To encounter Jesus is to meet the most fascinating person who has ever lived. I believe Jesus is the most completely authentic, the most completely real human being ever to have drawn breath on this planet. There is a clarity about this man. The gospel, according to Luke, includes more episodes from Jesus' final journey to Jerusalem than any of the other gospels. Included in Luke are some of the most beloved of Jesus' parables, along with some of his most difficult sayings. Once Jesus has set his face on Jerusalem, there's an underlying urgency which permeates his teachings and compels even the passing listener to wake up and pay closer attention. As Jesus grows in his understanding that his time is drawing near, he focuses on transmitting his core message to the disciples closest to him, and the disciples who are just now beginning to understand the challenge Jesus presents to live by this kingdom ethic. They beg Jesus with a mixture of fear and desperation to increase our faith. Increase our faith. It's a legitimate request when the disciples understand the size of the task they're facing. They want what they feel they don't have. When John Big Daddy Bishop, isn't that a great name? When John Big Daddy Bishop started serving ribs about 40 years ago at the Dreamland Barbecue in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, he posted a sign in large letters just above the door stating the ground rules to his customers. Just ribs, no slaw, no beans, no potato salad, and don't ask. But we all want what we don't have. And Jesus must tell his disciples that more faith is not what they really need. They need to understand that even the smallest seed of faith enables God to work in a person's life in ways that defy ordinary human experience. Even just a speck of faith, even the smallest fragment, they can live by his teachings. They can thrive. To know whom you have believed makes everything new. And because Jesus knows so completely who he is, he helps us to know ourselves. He knows every human being wants to be about something. He knows no one is satisfied with simply putting in their time and surviving till retirement. He knows everyone wants to serve a higher purpose. He knows we want more because we've been created to be more. It's in our DNA. And so Jesus continues to teach his disciples about how to live and how to serve. Remember that song? You've got to serve somebody. It may be Satan, it may be the Lord, but you're going to have to serve somebody. Jesus is saying, this is how to live. This is kingdom living. This is the way life truly is. We all want to remember this reality as we fill out our annual financial commitments. Maybe good to remind myself, maybe you, we aren't filling them out to St. Michael's. We aren't filling them out to the vestry. We aren't filling them out to the rector or to any of the clergy. We're filling them out to God. And in response to this God who has given us all that we have and all that we are as pure gift. I mean, look at yourselves. Look at your life. You are so incredibly precious to God. When God looks at you, God sees God's very own child. And for some of you, as soon as you hear those words, your body language changes, your thoughts go somewhere else, because you believe at the core of your being that your inadequacies and your imperfections make you inherently unworthy of God's love. And you could not be more wrong if you tried. God's grace is a gift, waiting to be received by people like us, people who have so little faith sometimes that we can barely see the tiny little seeds in our outstretched hands. In one of her poems, that brilliant poet Mary Oliver wrote, "I don't want to go through life not having lived in this world. I want to be a bridegroom married to amazement." Wow. To be married to amazement is to learn to see ourselves as God sees us. And isn't it amazing, I mean truly amazing, that the one who knows us best, the one who knows everything about us, the one who knows how screwed up we are, is the one who loves us most. Or as Paul's second letter to Timothy in the New Revised Standard Version expresses it, "I know the one in whom I have put my trust, and I am sure that he is able to guard until that day what I have entrusted to him." They say you only receive a few precious opportunities to tell the people what they need to hear. They say you need to make every opportunity count. They say only a few small words can make all the difference. And when I see all of you this morning, I believe it. In fact, I think I can even see it. Small, precious seeds.